Greetings to our listeners. Today we will talk about Soviet serial killer Gennady Mikhasevich, who murdered at least 36 women. Click subscribe button to see more content like this. Mikhasevich claimed the number of his victims was 43. He was born on April 7, 1947, in Belarus, which was a part of the Soviet Union at that time. After coming of age, he served in the army and graduated from university. He worked as a mechanic and was the father of 2 children. In his own words, despite all murders he committed, he was conscientious in his job, a caring father, and did not drink alcohol. He was a member of the Communist Party and was also a member of the Soviet Volunteer Group. According to Soviet standards at that time, he seemed to be an almost exemplary citizen. He started committing his crimes in 1971. He had completed his duty in the army and was getting ready to return home. However, he found out that his girlfriend of many years had left him and married someone else. The news made him desperate. He was helpless. He decided to hang himself as the pain he was experiencing was unbearable. But at this moment, something happened that would change his life. He met a lonely woman on the road and decided to take out all his anger on the woman. He dragged the woman into the forest and strangled her. Thus, he committed his first murder. However, he must have enjoyed killing her, as he committed yet another murder in the same year. The following year, he committed 2 more murders. During his first murders, he was waiting in a deserted place, hoping that a woman would pass by chance. After a while, he bought a car. It was a red Soviet-made Zaporozhets. He was no longer waiting for his victims in deserted places. He was now wandering on the roads in his red car, looking for his victims. Gennady chose hitchhiking women as his victims. The area he chose was far from the sea. It provided a lot of convenience, as there were not many options for people to travel other than do hitchhiking. He got married in 1976, but his murders continued to increase. Gennady would take his victims to a deserted place and attack them. Then he would strangle them until they lost consciousness. A main purpose of committing the murders was to rape women. He raped his victims after they lost consciousness, and then he would kill them with a rope or in other different methods. He did not use a special weapon or different methods for the murders he committed. He carried out the murders in a completely improvised manner. After killing his victims, he would steal their money and all their valuables and throw the bodies on the side of the road and drive away. That is what many serial killers do. He would collect souvenirs from his victims, but while dismantling his victims, he would not miss many valuable items, as well as ordinary things such as scissors. He sometimes gave the stolen items to his wife as a gift. He was a member of the Communist Party and a group of volunteer people. Thus, he was never suspected to be a murderer. People who were detained for the murders were actually people who had nothing to do with those crimes. Gennady, on the other hand, could easily get away with his crimes because of his position in the society. In the meantime, he continued his murders. However, Gennady was exposed after a young inspector named Nikolai Ignatovich found certain clues. The inspector was convinced that all these murders were committed by a serial killer. In February 1984, a female student was murdered. This incident attracted Inspector Ignatovich's attention. A murder had similarities with other murders committed in the area. He decided to investigate the incident further. Eyewitnesses reported that they frequently saw red Zaporozhets vehicle in the area. Ignatovich followed this clue and started an intense investigation. The murderer had the comfort of being informed about the investigations as he worked at the Voluntary People's Druzhina. Gennady had committed 14 murders that year. But even if he was aware of the investigations, this could not prevent him from being caught. Although he continued to commit the murders, he was becoming increasingly tense. To derail the investigation, he sent a letter to a local newspaper, written by members of an organization called the so-called Patriots of Vitebsk Underground Organization. In fact, there was no such organization. However, Gennady had prepared a very clever plan to divert the source of the murders. The police saw the letter as a sick joke and did not take it too seriously. However, for Inspector Ignatovic, it did not matter whether the letter was real or not. What was important was the fact that he had the killer's handwriting. Gennady came up with a plan of his own, and during his crimes committed in 1985, he started leaving notes near his victims' dead bodies. The letters were allegedly written by patriots of Vitebsk. Thus, with the letters sent to the investigators, he was trying to make them think that the crimes were committed by many people, not one person. But he missed something. The letters he left were written in his own handwriting. Although he was aware of the entire investigation, he was starting to expose himself. The police who were helping the investigation decided to check the handwriting of all the men living in the area. After sorting 556,000 samples, graphologists found a match: Gennady Mikhasevich. Further investigation revealed other evidence, convincing them of Mikhasevich's guilt. Gennady had committed 12 crimes only in 1985 alone. He had come to the end of the road. Gennady was arrested on December 9, 1985, 14 years after committing his first murder. While the police were taking him away in handcuffs, he said to his wife, "This is a mistake, I'll be right back." He was taken to the prosecutor's office. Even though he tried to resist and plead not guilty during the interrogation, he finally broke down and confessed to all his crimes. He took the investigators to the place where he hid some of his victims' belongings, but there were different items that he gave as gifts. In one case, he even melted 2 wedding rings belonging to the women he killed and admitted that he used them to make dental fillings and crowns for his wife. Gennady raped his victims and enjoyed killing them. He was given death sentence. Although the exact date of his death is unknown, we can say that his execution by shooting took place within 3 years after his detention. Gennady's case was highly publicized. After his arrest, several officials were dismissed and some were tried for abuse of power. Gennady evaded persecution for the murders he committed for 14 years. He confessed to 42 murders, and it is estimated that he was involved in more than 55 murders. Since the police could not catch Gennady for a long time, there were some who were wrongfully convicted. The first of such false arrests took place in 1974, when an innocent man was sentenced to 10 years in prison for the crime he didn't commit. In 1980, another arrested person who was tried for these murders was executed. Another of the arrested men went blind while serving his sentence. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison.